Thinking about today, thinking about the them, thinking about the other. It won't melt your brain or drive you insane. The difference doesn't matter. It's as old as time.
Hi, my name's Nigel. I am the singer and songwriter of the Plymouth UK-based indie funk band The Curve, and this is my podcast, Songs Nobody Asked Me For. A space all about trying to stay creative in an uncreative world, maybe. I'm trying to get a little strapline off here now. I don't think that's quite right, is it really? Trying to be original in an unoriginal world. That's what I'm after, I think. Yeah, I'm going to work on that. Welcome, and if you're new, welcome to this. And if you're new, I'm going to say right from the beginning, please subscribe or like or follow my channel here. We're chugging along down the road. I'm hanging in there, Had a couple of weeks of not really being sure what to talk about. That happens to me sometimes, but I've also managed to do a couple of really interesting interviews, which you'll have seen now, but for me, they're sort of further down the line, really. Where I'm at the moment is the episode in which I've been interviewing and chatting to Rob C has just come out. So I think that's about episode 26, and I think this is well into the 30s, maybe 37, something like that. So I'm proud of that. But I've noticed, I've said this before, that every now and then I get into this space where I think, I don't think I've got anything to say for myself, really. So I thought I'd sort of change some things around, and I turned the camera like 180 degrees around. So whereas I'm normally sat over that side of the room, which has those pictures of the band and different iterations of my band, I'm sitting in front of some of the guitars that live in the house. I'll probably sort of shrink this screen down, but so you may not see it, but to the left of me here is a very nice guitar that's my electric guitar. That's my son's, my eldest son's, and then I have two of my gigging guitars, I would call them, really. So I have my Ovation over here, my Ovation acoustic, which I used for donkey's years, and then behind me I have my lovely green Gretsch, which is my current love of my life and main gigging guitar. Look, I should lean over slightly. You've seen it before, but some of you won't have. If you're new, you won't have seen it before. But it's a fine thing. I'm very happy and very proud of it, really. Anyway, this is me jumping back into the saddle. It's been a very, very difficult 6 or 7 months, actually, music-wise. Just various different things happening to various different members of the band, but in particular, I think the last month and a half have been very frustrating. And for me, both as a songwriter and then as a person knowing how close we are to sort of what I think is moving into another level of the band, really. Small, big, I'm not sure yet. But changing from a 4-piece to a 5-piece. And I remember when Brad joined us, what a difference it was to sort of move from a 3-piece to a 4-piece. And now Tim has joined on the drums. Graham's really getting into his percussion, and it's great. However, a couple of things got in the way, and one was I really wanted to introduce some new songs, and I've talked a little bit about throughput here sometimes, and how difficult it is when you're trying to get new things going and they don't quite work out, or things don't go quite the way you hoped they would as a songwriter, because you're always looking at the next songs you might write or what you might do next, and always frustrated if we're not getting new stuff done. And I think in my head I was thinking, for me, I was more interested in how do we move forward with new people rather than I want all of my back catalogue to be played perfectly and right. And then I think for the band, which I kind of understand, I'm saying this in a very neutral way because it's just interesting for people to get a sense of how bands work, really, I suppose. I think for other people in the band, they were quite keen that Tim should come and should be able to play everything as we were doing it before we start looking at new stuff. And I suppose my argument was, if we try new songs, then we're all learning them together. Tim's got it new, he can work it out for himself. And he's got most of our songs off pat, and then there's 2 or 3 classics, as it were, that he's struggling to play, and then it's been really hard to work it all out. Now, in amongst this, he decided to stick his thumb through an electric planer at work, which nearly lost his thumb. Thank goodness, thank God he didn't. But, left with quite a bad injury. I mean, he's amazingly playing drums with us, He can't, it's his snare hand, and he's playing it jazz style now, so it's got resting in his hand rather than hitting it. which I find quite astonishing that he's able to swap from one to the other. But it means we've had to adapt. So we've got a drummer coming in, and it never really occurred to me just what a big thing it was to have a new drummer. I'd forgotten really, because Graham joined us as a new drummer. We'd had a guy called Mike before who was a full kit drummer. Graham was learning kit drums, and it was quite an adventure, and trying to work ourselves out, lots and lots and lots of practice. And we had 6-8 weeks without a gig. We're into February and we haven't played a gig this year yet. And I'd kind of purposely done that to allow the new drummer to come in, work on new material. But new material has gone out the window for the minute now. And I think Tim's pretty much there, but I think we've become so used to being a super tight band because we played together for a really long time. The three of us, John, Graham and myself, played together for years. Brad joining as a second guitarist is not as significant a change as getting a new drummer in. I mean, he's brought an amazing layer of sound, and it's fantastic. But the three of us continued as this sort of unit of tightness in which we have Brad bringing accompanying stuff and that. So when suddenly the core basis of that completely changes, Graham's trying to work out what he wants to do in what song with percussion and how he's learning what to play in which part. And then we've got Tim trying to pick up all the songs all at the same time. It's been a bit stressful, I think, in different ways. So, yeah, that's been a tricky time. There's been other things that have happened for other band members and myself and different things, and it's all just led to this delay and a slight, and tiny little tension between us around, is it going to be good enough? Are we going to be okay? Versus, yeah, of course it is. And all the time for me, I suppose, thinking about this podcast, I'm always thinking, look, it doesn't matter. We don't have to be where we were. We move forward. So I always want to move forward, and it makes me think of bands who don't want to play their classics, their old stuff, because they've got new stuff out and they want to play that, and everybody wants to hear the original stuff, and it's that ongoing tension, really. But we have our first gig coming up, a week today. So this is Saturday in February. I can't remember what day. It's been a long day already. And next Saturday is the 21st. So you take 7 off from that. I think that makes it about the 14th today. And next Saturday we have our first gig of the year. It's at the B Bar, and the sad thing is the B Bar at Plymouth is closing. Will be closed by the time this comes out. I think it's being taken over by a chain or something, so it's not going to be the same. It's a lovely independent noodle bar that has always supported original music, all sorts of music really. They had an acoustic cafe there once a month, and I'm hoping to ask the guy who ran that, who's also a songwriter and singer, Jesse, whether he would come and do one of these, because I'd like to chat to him and I'd like to talk to him about the acoustic cafe that he ran. Because it really gave me a lifeline as an individual player, and then me and John and Graham as bands. And then we played as a 4-piece. End of last year we did our first proper gig there, and it was fantastic. It's a really small stage, and we just about squeezed on. I don't know how we're all going to fit on with the drummer and the percussion, but really excited about it. But it made me think, well, maybe something interesting to talk about here would be my experience of what it's like to actually play a gig, really. Preparation, the feelings of it. And I think I'm more apprehensive given where we are at the moment, so I think that's making me more nervous about it. Although I think we'll pull it off, we'll work it out. The last gig we actually played, we played 2 gigs with Tim so far. One of them was, he did amazingly well, because we had to play 2 45-minute sets, and he barely knew our songs, but I think he did all right, a few mistakes, a few ending difficulties, but nothing we couldn't laugh about or think about. And it was one of those gigs where I think we had about 3 people there, so it probably didn't matter so much. And then we played, and bear with me a second, don't go away. That's better, isn't it? Why did I forget this sometimes, because I'm recording and I've got a heater on, and I'm into a roll and I can't stop, and I can't start this again. So, hey, you're suddenly going to think, wow, that's a lot better, isn't it? Because that was bloody noisy. And I'm hoping you're going to be able to hear the beginning of this. So, where was I? Yes, a gig coming up. So, very excited to play at the B Bar. Slightly more nervous about the fact that, are we going to be tight? Are we not going to be tight? Yes, and I was telling you about Tim with us. The first gig was, the second gig was great. We were only supposed to play for about 40 minutes, but we ended up playing for nearly an hour because people loved what we were doing. It was in a pub in Tavistock, and we were tight. We sounded really good, really good. So we've been practicing and getting together, and I'm hoping that, it's going to have been enough that we're going to play this gig and it's going to be just fine. I'm going to be doing two songs on my own because it pads out the set a bit if we haven't got enough songs. I've always done one at the beginning. Well, not always. I've often done one at the beginning of the first set. But I'm doing a cover at the beginning of the second set, my first time ever. And in a way, I want to do it with a band, but I didn't want to. Again, I'm always itching to get on with something new, but I'm really aware that I've got to consolidate at the moment. So I didn't actually say, I said to them, I'll do this on my own, but I said it is going to be a song I want to try and do. And I'm going to do Burning Down the House by Talking Heads. And I think it's fantastic to fit with us. I think it will work, especially with Gray being on percussion these days. I think that's going to really bring something to that. But so I've got those to do. So it's kind of it's first gig of the year. Haven't played for 2 months. I'm feeling nervous, And I think if I think about what it's like to really play a gig, I want to go back a little to a podcast I did in which I talked about. I think it was the second one of the space in between, and I talked about being an introvert really, and that although this feels quite a sort of extroverted thing to do, it isn't really. I think it's a way of, I talked about various thoughts about what I thought this might be as a safe way of being able to express yourself as an introvert really. But as an introvert, it means that I'm always very, very nervous before I do gigs. And I sort of kind of going back to early days, I remember that I used to. So the thing about playing a gig is there's a lot involved in it. You've got all this practice. You practice and practice and practice. And then on the day, it used to be a pain in the arse when I was in bands in London. A different London, of course, back then. But, I'm talking early 90s, I guess, late 80s. We would have a gig, say, at the Rock Garden, and I'd be the person with a car, so I would be everybody's kit would be in my car. They put it in there the night before, so I'd have the drums, I'd have the amps and everything, and then I have to drive into the centre of London, and I have to park Covent Garden, somewhere like that, somewhere really central, which you could kind of find the odd space here and there back then. And often I'd be on a yellow line or a double yellow line somewhere, and I have to bundle all this stuff out. So I've got to make sure one of the guys is there before I arrive. And then you have to bundle all this stuff out and lugging it all out. And often lugging it upstairs, back down, back upstairs, back down, or wherever it might be. And then jump in my car, drive around for ages to find somewhere to park. For what at the time seemed an extortionate amount of money, and given the price of parking these days was probably cheap as chips, I don't know. But it was complex, And of course we're doing this, if we're going on at 8 o'clock in a pub, we're probably doing this at 5:30, 6 o'clock, So you do this, you unpack all your stuff, you find somewhere to park, you wait for everybody to get there, and then you set up. And if you're playing with other bands, there's going to be this bun fight for a sound check. That's what it used to be like in London. Bun fight for a sound check. And we got very used to, my band now, we're very good at very minimal sound checks. We take a little longer to set up. Brad takes a while to set up with all these guitars and that, and obviously drummers and percussionists take time to set up. And I take longer than I ever did. But relatively speaking, we can set up in maybe 10 minutes. And then we could sound check for 2 or 3 minutes. Never been fussy. As long as it sounds clear, we can hear each other. And I would say to them, look, you need to better hear each of these. I'm always trying to emphasise the fact that we need to hear my guitar as well as Brad's, because people see Brad as, quite rightly, as the lead guitarist. But there are some songs in which my guitar sort of takes the lead. But also the guitars are playing off each other. You want to be able to hear both of them, really. So we have to sometimes get people to turn Brad down a bit or turn me up a little bit. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. But I do remember 1 or 2 gigs in London where we were waiting for some other band to do a sound check. And you might have 45 minutes for 3 bands to do a sound check. And you'd have one band taking half an hour to do their sound check. Really being finicky about this and that and this. Oh, no, I just want to try this again. And some of it was sort of kind of, it's a terrible thing to say, but some of it was sort of sabotage tactics. I've talked about this before, about playing when other bands are with you and then people sort of messing around with all your volume controls and that's just before you're going to go on, or when you don't see they do it, so that when you come on you realise. I used to make drawings of my settings on my pedals and my amps. I could just have a quick look and think, is that all right? I still do it today, but I take a photograph these days. Yeah, take a photograph. But it's because of that sort of slightly traumatic memory. I think quite the opposite happens. My experience in Plymouth is that musicians, there's a lot of bond between them, and generally speaking, I've yet to meet an RC musician. Really, they're all really lovely, and yes, great community of musicians in the southwest here, I think. So back to the plot. In London, we're there, getting through the traffic, getting through the rush hour, trying to find somewhere to unload, trying to find somewhere to park. We haven't got roadies or anybody that's going to help us do any of this stuff. And we have, if we're lucky enough to have a sound engineer or somewhere, you have a sound check. Now, there are two parts to the sound check. One is making sure it sounds okay out in the audience, and the other is that it sounds okay on the stage. And these two elements are so important. I've played gigs where, we've been told that the sound outside, out in the audience is amazing. Friends there, but it sounds shit on stage. We did one in Plymouth a little while back in a little pub on the Barbican, and we had exactly that. I was stood there, and all I could hear was really loudly John's bass. I couldn't hear my guitar at all. I could then hear the drums quite loudly, and that was about it, really. But apparently, because we had some people there who were with us, out on in the pub, it sounded really, really good, and the balance was great. That's not enjoyable, Even if, it's what you want. You don't want to sound really good on stage and sound rubbish out somewhere else, but you're trying to enjoy the experience of gigging as well. And if you're playing and everything is sounding amazing and good and you can hear everybody and we're all joined and connected, yes, that's fantastic, isn't it? It's going to be fantastic. Whereas if it sounds rubbish on stage, then you're going to feel that, and it's hard to be confident. I think I've talked. I've talked about everything in my life. I don't think I've got anything left to say I haven't said before, really. But when we played at a thing called Strawberry Fields, a festival, I did talk about that. We had this is called foldback. The sound that you have on the stage, with no foldback at all, and so we couldn't hear each other at all. There was nothing we could hear. All I could hear was the drums. And the drums, thankfully, all they could hear was my guitar. So, I follow him, he follows me. And we just have to trust that I know the songs well enough, he knows the songs well enough. But we manage, but that's never ideal. So, you do this, and maybe you finish at 6 o'clock, or maybe you finish at 6:30. So you've got 2 hours of sitting around. And I used to find it really torturous, Again, Pav and I were talking in one of our conversations. I was talking about our old drummer, Brian, lovely guy, who seemed to need to get very drunk in order to play drums live. So we would have a sound check somewhere in London, and then he would just vanish. And the first time was terrifying because I'm thinking, shit, where's he gone? Is he going to come back? And then when he came back first time, he had a big smile on his face, a very drunken smile on his face, and I thought, oh no, he's pissed. This is going to be terrible. But actually played a blinder. And I realised, he was so shy that I think he needed to bolster his confidence by getting very drunk. Thankfully I didn't need to do that, but people need different things. Oh, excuse me. But I would just be very nervous. And it was always difficult, and it still is. This is a difficult element of it, is that if people have come to see us, one of the best ways you can help your nerves is just sitting with people, chatting, catching up. But if you're the singer, you want to look after your voice. So, I've been in places where I've had 2 hours, and of course, pubs get noisy, so you having to raise your voice. Back then, people were smoking. So, it really affected my voice. So, in the end, what I had to do is I had to say, look, I'm just going to sit very quiet. I'm not going to say anything. I'd be so nervous. And for me, it's always been, I imagine for some people it might be the opposite way around, but for me, I'm more nervous if there's 1 or 2 people there than if there's 50 or 100 people there. The bigger the audience, the better I feel. I feel great, especially if they're into what we're doing, of course. But if I've got a small audience, so as I'm watching the place fill or not fill, that affects how I feel. So you're already in this place, you've got lugging equipment around, setting up the same bloody stuff you set up before, and then sitting there feeling really nervous until you start. And then you have this, you start the gig, The first song is always, for me, a little moment, I wonder how this is going to go. So I always try and pick, we do the same first song at the moment, till something new comes along, which is called Song About Me. I might use it in the intro actually, just so I can prove a point, make a point. And yeah, it's a song I kind of know. And I start it, everybody comes in, and I think me starting it means I can make sure in my head that it's the right time for me, that it's not too fast, too slow. And we go from there. And usually I feel my confidence rises and falls depending on the speed of the songs, how well we're playing, audience reaction, the vibe of the song on stage, if we're really getting into something we're doing. All these things make a big difference to how you feel. So you can feel it's a big feel thing, it's a big emotional thing, it's a big, oh, I wonder how this feels. And mostly I love the bit of being on stage, and when we've played gigs, and again we did this in London, occasionally we do it now, we play for half an hour. You kind of think, wow, I've done all of this preparation, all of this practice, all of this lugging stuff up, sound checking, sitting around getting nervous for half an hour of playing and enjoying it, and then possibly having to sit for an hour, 2 hours, while other bands play, if you're not, you're not the last on, because otherwise you have that before, I guess, and then packing everything away, having to find a way to get the car back round, loading all the stuff on, taking it all home, and then the next day or two, the other guys getting their equipment, back to practicing, and along you go. Oh, God, I'm just yawning the whole day. This is very unprofessional of me, isn't it? It's been a long day. I'm wondering if that's changed. I think when I moved into doing the sort of singer-songwriter stuff, and I think I'm going to do a little podcast on being on my own at some point, I think, because that was another idea I had of something that I might talk about. Share some of the recordings I did on my 4-track here when I was recording everything, keyboards, bass, drum machine stuff, vocals, guitars. But when I was playing gigs on my own, I think it was initially better because I didn't have to worry about anybody else's performance. I didn't have to worry that everybody was going to be okay. I didn't have to worry about everybody being there on time or any of those sorts of things. It was just me. So I really got a lot of strength at that time from feeling like, I had my wits about me. It was about me and what I was doing and how well I did with that. And I could play what I wanted when I wanted. I could change the set. I could do whatever I wanted, really. However, I think over time, I started to find that a bit of a nervy experience. I've very recently just got, I used to have a mini disc player, very briefly, and it worked for one, it didn't work, and I don't know why I didn't take it back. But I have 2 mini discs, and one of them was a live recording from I talked about the band Minds Like These that I did with the mental health services a little while back, and we played a gig. It was like a mental health awareness day, and they had a stage there, and they had lots of bands from a variety of different backgrounds and singers and songwriters playing. And I did a solo set there, and then the band came on when we played. And I had this mini disc recording of it, and I was really excited to sort of go and get. I took it to one of these photograph places that says they'll do, transfers from VHS recordings and CDs and stuff onto MP3 and stuff like that. MP4. So yeah, I got some MP3s done of it, and I was listening to it on the way home on yesterday, and it's pretty grim. I mean, it's kind of it was a shame because the band sound quite good, but the recording is not great. So it's kind of it feels like the mic was in the wrong place. So you can hear my guitar quite loudly. Don't mind that. But and you can hear the drums when they're on quite loudly, but the vocals are very quiet. But I could feel it. So I could reminisce about that. The bit I thought was hilarious was listening to myself. I did probably a half an hour set. It was nice to hear. There's a couple of songs I haven't heard in years. I thought, oh wow, I like that song. But my first song, I got introduced, and literally one person clapped, and then I played, and then one person clapped. I did notice towards the end, maybe just more people came along, but I thought, oh, well, some things haven't changed. That you still get these gigs sometimes where, one person and a dog's there, and that was that experience then. But I think it was easier because I would literally pitch up with a guitar. That was oh wow, the liberation of that. And because before that I'd been playing the electric, and then I was playing the acoustic for the singer-songwriter stuff. Literally, I turned up with an acoustic guitar. I didn't use any pedals, any effects. I would, what we call DI, direct input into the PA system that they'd have there, so I wouldn't need an amp. Oh, it's lovely. Just turn up with your electric guitar in its case, with a capo, with some like a set list, tuner. That's it. That's all I needed, and I love that. That I really did enjoy that. And I seem to have increased so much the amount of equipment I use now, which is a sign of something good in one way. In another way, oh, flipping pain in the arse it is, because I've got so much stuff to lug around now. But it's kind of fine, you know. I feel more relaxed doing gigs now. I think back in London it was so competitive and so fraught, I think. We still get there early for sound check. Some places let us sound check, some places you don't. Some places have space for you to put all your stuff. Like B-Bar doesn't. Well, it does actually. It has a little sort of cupboard by the side, but that's hard. So you're trying to find a place for all your gubbins and junk and stuff, cases and bags and stuff. Somewhere like the Exeter Phoenix, which is a really big place, there's a whole big room behind the stage that you get as artists to leave your stuff, and you know nobody can go into those rooms. So that's fantastic. You know that feels a bit more rock and roll, really, but more of an unusual experience for us, I guess. So I think nowadays I'm more relaxed about it, and especially if you're the only band playing, or if you're just playing with one other band, it's kind of quite easy, and it really makes a difference that, as I say, the sort of relative camaraderie there seems to be between bands in the southwest. Really, you all know you're in a tight spot, and especially bands that are, if you're all playing original music, you get a vibe about that. You kind of know where you're at with it, really. But they're not straightforward things. So mostly, I think I've described that as a whole process of lugging and anxiety, followed by a short period of joy and excitement, followed by lugging everything and going home, really, and being knackered, but usually with a warm buzz, and especially if you have a good gig. And I'm excited for the B-Bar. The sound was good last time we were there. People were really into the music. Fantastic, Happy days. Right, I better stop. I feel like I've talked for ages today, but maybe I haven't. Do subscribe, as I say, or like, or comment. Tell me about your gig experience. What's it like for you if you're a musician? I'm sure it's different for different people, and I'd love to know. I'd love some feedback or some questions or anything, really. I'm really happy to sort of bring those in, really. Follow the band, #Music the Curve. Hopefully we may have met some of you in the B-Bar, you never know. And do come and say hello to me if you've come along because you're watching or listening to the podcast. That'd be amazing. I'd love somebody to come along and say, oh yeah, I heard about it on the podcast, I've been listening to you and I looked up a gig and here I am, that'd be fantastic. Failing that, I will be here by myself or with somebody else next week. And thank you for being with me, and I'll catch you soon.
Back in the day